What up, guys? In this video, I'm going to show you how to crush the main line of the Italian opening as black. Of course, the Italian opening occurs after the moves 1e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and then 3 bishop c4. This is the Italian opening move, and White's idea is simple. He develops the bishop, he's setting up castling, he's setting up c3, d4 ideas, and so on, and White has a very flexible game. Now, of course, if you're going to play 1e4, e5 as black, as I personally do and recommend, I think most players will learn so much more and improve so much faster playing e4, e5 as black versus other openings, but I digress. But anyways, if you play 1e4, e5 as black as I do and as I recommend here, you're going to have to know how to play versus the Italian opening, especially the main line, which starts after knight f6 and then d3, bolstering the pawn on the e4 square. Now here, personally, I recommend the line bishop c5. Bishop e7 is kind of all the rage right now in 2025 at the Super GM level. I haven't quite figured out why yet. Maybe Stockfish shows it's better than it thought to be previously. But anyways, I still play the old main line, bishop c5 here, a very solid move. And from here, my plan is simple. If White goes for the main line here, which involves moves like castles, c3, knight bd2, h3, rook e1, maybe b4, a4, and so on. If White goes for that setup, the sequence we're going to play as black is so simple. We go d6, then a6, then bishop a7, then castles, then h6, then rook to e8, and then finally bishop e6, challenging this bishop and intending the d5 break soon after. So let's go through this one by one, explaining all of the moves. Here, White goes c3 in this game. By the way, I just played this blitz game on Lead Chess. I will get back to playing some rated games online. My actual playing strength based on some training matches is quite a bit higher than the roughly 2,000 ELO I have on chess.com right now. But anyways, White goes c3, I go d6. Again, just played this game on Lead Chess, anonymous game. From here, White castles. Now, we're going to start with the move a6 here. The point behind a6 is sooner or later, White's going to go d4 or b4. That's almost always on the agenda from White's from White's point of view. Therefore, at some point, we're going to have to play one of 3 moves here, either bishop b6 or a6 or a5. Now, bishop b6 is solid. The idea being if White goes b4 or d4, the bishop's already out of the way of the attack. And the point of a6 or a5, at least part of it, is if White does go d4, the bishop can go back to a7, which is often a good square. Now, I like the line with a6. This is the most solid move here for black. The point being, next, we're going to go bishop a7, retreating preemptively, sort of a prophylactic move against White's d4 or b4 advancing ideas. And beyond that, the benefit of a6 over a5 is the move a6 maintains control of the b5 square. Therefore, White can't go bishop b5 at some point. Instead, if you go a5 here, the benefit of that is you stop the idea b4 permanently by White. However, in the absolute main line here, White is going to go bishop b5, putting pressure on this knight, therefore threatening d4 a little faster. Like this. So overall, I find a6 to be a little more solid, a little easier to play and understand, and at least as good, if not even a tiny bit better. All right, from here, White goes h3, a good move. I go bishop a7, again, the main line here, and now White goes a4. So this is actually a very precise move order by White. He's showing that he knows what he's doing at least a little bit here. So why is White going a4? Well, one of the main ideas in this a6, bishop a7 Italian opening is White may want to go for the line with a4 and then b4 like this, expanding on the queen side. And basically, White is getting a little bit of a space advantage on the queen side, not a little bit, actually quite a bit. And that does let him fight for a tiny edge. Black should be okay, but this is quite a strong idea. Now, if White doesn't do this, let's say White instead continues with moves like knight bd2, intending rook e1, knight f1, knight g3, and so on. In that case, the simplest way to play as black is just to follow our main line of castles, h6, rook e8, bishop e6, kind of like this. Castles, rook e1, h6, knight f1, rook e8, knight g3, and then bishop to e6. Now, this exact position was achieved in several different games between Hans Niemann and Magnus Carlsen, Hans Niemann as white, Magnus as black, in the 2024 Speed Chess Championship. So Magnus here playing this line as black versus Hans. It shows you how much he trusts this opening for black. I mean, obviously Magnus did not want to lose that match, but I digress. Anyways, this plan works whether or not white goes for the b4 a4 plan. But getting back to the game right here, white did go a4 in this blitz game. I castled, and then white went b4, expanding on the queen side again. So white's idea is to gain space. Maybe he wants to go b5 later. Maybe he wants to go d4 later. Overall, black is still perfectly solid, perfectly fine, but white is pressing at least a little bit. Now here we go h6. The point of this is to guard that g5 square. There are no bishop g5, knight g5 ideas anymore. And by the way, if white were to go, for example, bishop g5 right here, it's just not that dangerous of a move. We go h6, driving it back like this, and from there, we can later go g5 if we want to. It's just nothing to worry about. As you can see, the computer already shows black here is more than fine, so that is not something to worry about. Instead, white goes b4, we go h6, guarding g5. We have rook e1, and then rook to e8. Now, the idea behind rook e8 is simple. We're trying to go bishop e6 here, challenging white's bishop on c4. Now, we don't have to go rook e8 here. Technically, Stockfish does show bishop e6 immediately, intending bishop takes, then f takes is also playable, but that line, in my opinion, is a little more complicated and a little more difficult to play as black. So instead, I like the old line here, rook to e8, intending bishop e6, challenging white's light squared bishop. Now that is super, super important. This piece by white is very, very strong. It's pouncing on the weak point f7, so we do want to challenge that as quickly as we can. That is our plan for sort of neutralizing this piece. All right, now from here, the main line for white begins with the move knight bd2. Now, white did not play the main line in this game. Instead, white went bishop e3, challenging my bishop, sort of in the way that I'm trying to challenge white's. Now, real fast, I do want to point out, if you want to know what to play versus the main line here, if white were to go, say, knight bd2, then as black, we do go bishop e6. The main line continues, bishop takes, then rook takes, and then from here, white has a bunch of different ideas. Queen c2 is perhaps the main line, but other moves like rook b1, bishop b2, and knight to f1 are also playable. You do want to have different responses, but overall, black's idea is kind of the same in most cases. We're basically intending a fast d5 break. The only real exception is if white does go bishop b2. White has so much pressure here, white may be intending c4. In that case, knight e7, intending knight g6, maybe even knight f4 is actually the right idea instead. Now, back to the game. In the game, white went bishop e3, challenging my bishop. Now, as a general rule of thumb, if you always take on e3 in the Italian opening like this, when white goes bishop e3, you're usually going to be okay. So I do that in the game. I take on e3, white takes back. And even in other positions, like let's go back to here in this position. White just went d3, I went bishop c5. If white were to go bishop e3 right here, the same rule applies. Just take on e3. Like, you're always going to be okay if you follow that rule. Now, back to the game. Bishop e3, I take, and white takes back with the rook. Now, here, we have one pair of bishops off the board. White does have a little bit of a space advantage, a little bit on the queen side, but beyond that, black is perfectly fine. And here, as black, I just go bishop e6. Now, it turns out in this line, d5 right away is actually technically a little bit stronger. The reason why it works is you're capitalizing on the slightly awkward placement of the rook. For example, if white takes on d5, we take back with the knight, and then the rook on the e3 square is suddenly under attack, and that rook will be quite vulnerable. So that would be a good idea. Now, instead of that in the game, I do go bishop e6, kind of on autopilot, which is fine. And by the way, we are 12 moves into the game so far. I have not had to think at all. I'm literally just playing on autopilot, playing my plan of bishop c5, d6, a6, bishop a7, castles, h6, rook e8, bishop e6, and so on, which may sound a little bit boring, but like winning online versus strong players is not boring. It's actually quite fun. So I highly recommend this development plan. So now is where the game really begins from my standpoint, as so far I haven't had to think. Now I actually have to think a little bit. All right, in the game, white goes knight bd2, a solid move, good square for the knight. Instead, you can capture on e6. I would take back with the rook like this, which is fine. Very, very fine stuff. From there, I might go like queen d7, rook a to e8, or maybe d5. The general rule in this line for black is you want to focus on extreme centralization of your pieces, especially if you do go d5. So it's hard to really press for a win. We're trying to play kind of solid and just kind of wait and see where it goes. Instead, in the game, white did go knight b d2. Decent move as well. Now, here, black has a couple of good options. They both involve going for a fast d5 break. The one option is d5 right away. Even stronger is taking on c4. And then if white takes, then we go d5. So that's kind of the idea here. Now, instead, queen d7 was the move I played in the game. This move is maybe a little bit weaker here, maybe not quite as strong, but it's overall, it's a solid move. Nothing particularly wrong with it here. It's just not as strong. Now, here, the best plan for white, according to the engine, is taking on e6 and then going d4, and white might have a little bit of an initiative, kind of like this. That's kind of the idea from white's standpoint, threatening the fork. I may have to go back and so on. White would be maybe a tiny bit better, maybe pressing for a little bit of an edge. But instead, white played a different idea, a5. Okay, interesting move. Gaining space on the queen side. He is sort of abandoning the idea of b5. With the pawn on the a5 square, you can still go b5, so a5 might be a little bit of a mistake. It's a little bit inflexible, but also not a bad move either. The computer does approve of that move. Now here again, I've got to either take on c4, then go d5, or go d5 right away. Again, I didn't quite get the idea. You are starting to see I'm starting to be out of book a little bit here. Instead, I go knight d7. Now, the idea behind this, I am intending knight g6 here, with the idea being maybe going c6 d5 like this, maybe going knight f4 or knight f4, knight h5, queen to f6, and so on. There are some different ideas. Overall, the knight is better placed on g6 as opposed to c6, so this is a very common rerouting process in the Italian opening for black. Maybe not very common, but somewhat common. Now, here, what does white do? He goes bishop b3. Okay, decent move. Again, the computer likes the idea of taking on e6, then going d4, fighting for a little bit of an edge. Instead, bishop b3 was chosen from here, and I do go knight to g6. And finally, white does go d4. So this is the mini climax of the opening. Both sides getting pretty decent development here, connecting rooks and so on. White has decent development. And finally, the big pawn break. So how do I want to deal with the pawn break in this game? I do take on b3. Decent idea. White takes back. And now here, this really shows how, how far I have to go still with my chess understanding in these openings, in these middle games. The computer likes the idea of b5, and this move does not make any sense to me, even when analyzing with the engine. It just, my strategic understanding is just not there to understand this move. But let's see why the computer likes this move so much. It says b5 is good, with the point being you're clamping down on c4, you're gaining space, and so on. But white can take here, and then the computer says we take back, and white has this pressure on the a6 pawn, which personally I don't like, but the computer says it's not a problem. So go figure. I still have a lot to learn. Chess is a difficult game. Instead, in the game, I take on d4, which turns out to be a mistake. So we're going to see me going for a plan that looks good at first glance, but there is a very deep tactical flaw with the plan that I did not see, and my opponent, fortunately for me, did not see either. All right, I take on d4, white takes back, and then I go d5. Now, this idea of like taking then d5 is pretty common in the Italian. It occurs in a lot of games. White goes e5, the strongest move. You don't want to allow e takes d4. Then white would have the isolated d pawn on d4. That pawn would be super, super weak. That is not what you want as white. So white playing the right idea, e5. But here, I played the move knight h5, which looks logical, but the computer says knight h7 is better, as there is a tactical flaw with this move. And the solution, like, unless you're, I mean, you got to be rated way, way over 2,000, way beyond what I'm rated to understand this move right here by white. The idea behind it. It's super, super deep. If you like puzzles, pause the video and try to find the flaw with this move and how white can punish it, because it is a deep idea. I was clueless to this in the game. The move is g3. Absolutely absurd. You block the f4 square. That is sort of the idea, but you give up the h3 pawn, which is why I didn't even consider this move from white's standpoint during the game. Again, 3-minute blitz game. We're playing fast moves here. This is the right idea. And the reason why is if I take the pawn, then white can go back like this. And somehow these knights are getting trapped. Like if I were to go back to d7 here, queen to d1 hits the knight and it has nowhere to go somehow. So that is the proof in the pudding for why knight h5 is bad and g3 is good. Obviously, at my level, neither of us saw that. White goes rook c1, pressuring c7. Logical looking move to me. Again, white, it's an anonymous game, but white, I assume white is a strong player. He's played the opening phase of the game quite well overall. Not many players are even aware of the a4, b4 idea in the Italian. This guy appears to know what he's doing on some level. So here, I'm thinking, okay, one of my knights should be heading to f4, and I should be trying to pressure the king side, pressure these squares, and so on. But the big question is, which knight do I move? In the game, I went knight g to f4, but this is the wrong knight. I thought it was the right knight, with the idea being of like maybe rook e6 to g6, and g6 is free, and I'm pressuring g2, and so on. That looked pretty strong to me. Turns out it's the wrong knight. Turns out knight h to f4 is the correct one here. So go figure. So knight g to f4. Why is this bad? Well, white can again just fly back with the queen. We saw it in a different line, and white's doing well. Instead, king to f1 was played, and this move, when I saw it in the game, I was like having a field day in my head. Okay, this does not look right. I should have something here. And it turns out I do. The right idea for black is queen b5. The point being, if the king goes back, then knight e2 forks the rook and the king. I didn't see it. Shame on me. Chess YouTube. Shame on me. Didn't see it. Instead, g5 was my idea. Playing a little bit on autopilot here. Gaining space and giving the knight a retreat square on g2. Or just, sorry, g7. That way if white goes g4, I go knight g7, and my knight's safe. So white goes rook e to c3, pressuring c7. Again, queen b5 is the winning idea. Instead, I go c6. And now white finally goes g4. Okay, this is not a good idea for white. The problem, obviously, is that pawn is hanging, right? So I go back with the knight g7, and it's amazing how complicated such a simple position like this Italian opening middle game can be. Now, the pawn on h3 is under attack. How can white defend? Well, knight g1 does defend the pawn with the knight plus the rook and the queen all along the third rank. And white is defending, but the challenge for white, if he were to go knight g1 like this, he didn't do it in the game. If he were to do this, he's just so passive. Like, white doesn't have any pawn breaks on the queen side. e6 is covered. White really can't do anything. If he goes h4, I take it. And I have the f6 or f5 breaks, or even the h5 breaks. I'm the only one with pawn breaks in this scenario. Therefore, I'm really the only one who can, like, attack and actually make progress. Instead of knight g1, white went knight to h2. Okay. The knight here is trapping itself. There's like kind of nowhere to go. I'm feeling good right about now during this game. So I go knight g to e6, which in my head was just a natural developing move. I didn't really think about it too much. I'm being honest here. You develop the knight, you attack d4, it looked good, play it fast. That knight on g7 is perhaps the worst placed piece, so let's bring it out to e6. But it turns out this move is way stronger than I thought at first, because after I played it, I was like, wait a minute, how does white defend the pawn? How does white defend the pawn? He can't. He can't defend it. The only way to defend it is knight to f3, either of these knights to f3, but then you lose the h-pawn. And this is where my opponent started to think a lot, and I just didn't see a solution. Like, if d4 falls, you attack the queen, you win e5, but if you defend and h3 falls, then g5 is under attack, h5 is coming, f5 is coming. This is bad for white. All right, white goes knight d to f3. Defending d4, as good a try as any, in my opinion. Probably the best move here. I take the free pawn. We have knight takes h3, king g2, and then I just drop back. Knight h to f4. Now here, this is like basically a strategically winning position. The point being, black has all the play. Again, white has no pawn breaks on the queen side, no pawn breaks on the king side. I can go f5, f6, or h5 whenever I want to. I can build up with like king g7, rooks to the h file if I want to. I can do whatever I want here, really. And white is just going to be steamrolled sooner or later. Now, he accelerates the demise with a series of blunders by his king. He goes king g3 here. You don't have to be a very stable chess genius to find the winning move right here. Like puzzles, pause the video. Even if you're brand new to chess, you should be able to spot the winning idea right here for black. Simply knight e2. The triple royal fork on the two rooks, on the king, your winning material, and the game. So the king goes back to g2. I take on c3. Then knight f4 hits the king again. White goes king g3 again. I go knight e2 again. Win the rook again. And from here, I'm up 2 exchanges, a ridiculous amount of material. And as they say, the hardest game to win is the one game. I have lost so many games from positions like this where you'd think I'd be winning, but I end up losing. Let's see how I do. All right, rook e6, trying to maybe, I don't know, bring the other rook over. Let's see what happens. Knight d2, the knight drops back, rook to f8. Sure enough, intending potentially f5. Looks strong to me. White goes f3, I go f5, queen e3. I decide taking on g4 looks a little messy. Maybe white gets some pressure or something and he jumps in or something. So I just lock it down. f4. White's knights are doing nothing. They have no squares to go to, no forward squares at least. The queen's under attack. I'm feeling pretty good here. So the queen goes back to the d3 square. I go queen to h7, offering the queen trade. And white here, despite playing the opening well, makes another blunder, knight b3. I take the queen and win the game, showing that even at my level, my decent amateur level, roughly top 1% online player level, blunders always decide games, like it or not. That almost always happens. But anyways, going back to the real lesson of this opening, if you're looking for a solid way to meet the Italian opening from black's standpoint, I really like the plan for black where you just start knight f6, and if white goes d3, now I'll cover the alternatives real fast as well. If white goes d3, we go bishop c5, and our plan is just this d6, a6, bishop a7, castles, h6, rook e8, bishop e6 plan. It's so solid and it's really good. Now, there are a couple of ideas white can do where it doesn't work. If white goes for the bird's attack with a fast b4 like this, then the main line goes bishop b6, a4, a5, b5, knight e7. We're planning like castles, knight g6, c6, maybe d5. Black's fine, but obviously we do have to deviate from our plan. Instead, if white goes for, let's see, knight c3 here, in that case, the line I like for black that I find to be the easiest is you start a6, then you go h6, clamping down on g5, then you go d6, and then you castle, and it's overall pretty safe, but does lead to kind of boring-ish positions, in my opinion, but that's life. White also has these lines bishop g5. Now, this line, bishop g5, in the Italian is actually a very, 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 very important line. It's played all the time at the Super GM level, and it leads to very irrational positions. Now, they're mostly level, they're mostly equal, but they're very irrational. Black is often castling queenside. They're just really weird. The line I like for black, it's similar. We go d6, then a6. If white goes like knight b, d2, we go h6, drive back the bishop. Then here, actually, sorry, we do go to a7, I believe. Yes. From here, white has some options. If white goes like a4, kind of the main line, we don't castle here. This is the key. We go h6, driving back this piece. Then we go queen to e7. And our plan in most cases is to go g5, starting some sort of kingside attack. For example, if white goes like b4, we go g5, chasing it back. And from here, there are a million ideas. Knight d7 or h7 are quite good, intending like knight to f8, then g6, then like h5, h4, and so on. The lines are complicated. Actually, like there, then h5 right away is quite good. These lines are insane. I will have all this in my upcoming course and my school community, so check it out for that. And also for the Italian opening, there are some other options white has besides d3 real fast. Knight c3 is no good. You just take on e4, and the idea is knight takes d5. Black is good. If white goes, let's see, knight g5, the fried liver, that's a line where you just need to like memorize some stuff. Unfortunately, it's an ultra complicated line. The only good line for black is the main line with d5. The main line goes e takes, knight a5, bishop b5, c6, d takes, b takes, and then from here, white has like three main ideas. Queen f3 is one, but it's not very good. Bishop e2 is another line, also not very good. We go h6, driving back that knight with a great game. And the main line is bishop d3, at which point we go knight to e4, knight d5, attacking the knight, intending knight f4, attacking the bishop. And black there is fine, but again, it's very irrational stuff. White has some other lines here. For example, d4 is playable, but we take the pawn. Castles is playable, but again, we captured the pawn and we're fine. So overall, the Italian is really nothing to worry about as black, especially in the main line. If you just follow my plan of, bishop c5, and then d6, a6, bishop a7, castles, h6, rook e8, and then bishop to e6 like this. And it took me a long time to really understand this. It took me a lot of analysis to figure out that this plan is actually the way to go. So I hope it benefits you. I hope you can use this plan and just win more online games. It really is a simple strategy, and you can crush a lot of your opponents this way. But anyways, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, smash that like button, comment down below what you thought. And as always, I wish you the best of luck in your chess improvement journey in 2025 and beyond. And I will see you in the next video.